right. So I hope this goes pretty well. I have strong faith in this guy, but this is my first time being a VP putting these meetings together. So he told me he's welcome to heckling. And I purposely told him that, based on having talked to him before, that and you can let me know afterwards, but I told him I was like, interaction is great. And I think that I wanted him to be very interactive with y'all and make it to where it's more posing questions and concerns and things he sees. Eric is one of the most brilliant minds I've ever seen in terms of really being a curious person, but then using science to back up what's going on in systems. And he's done so much with soils and understanding what are limiting factors, how are plants interacting with soils. And that's where I thought that this group he would be a really good kind of kickoff for the year for the amount of knowledge that he has, and probably to inform us and elucidate a lot of things that maybe we don't know, that in terms of wherever we are, if we have our home garden, if we're working on local projects at a park, on a trail, larger restoration, that maybe we could be thinking a little bit more like Eric does about what are some of the maybe factors that we wouldn't even know to consider, that maybe we should be considering for any type of project, both small to large. So without further ado, my friend Eric.
Well, I want to thank Andy for that very kind and wonderful introduction. And so my name is Eric Fritz. I started in soil science the same way most people do, and I wanted to learn more, and I just started learning, and it threw me down a wormhole. So the origins of Tierra Buena Regenerative came out of a company that I attempted to build called Flora Vida Flower Farm, based just between Houston and Austin. I ran into problem after problem over 3 years, and every single problem led me to a solution, which at the end of that journey led me to start this company. So I would encourage throughout this presentation to ask as many questions as you can think of. This is meant to be an interactive experience for all of you here to learn more, understand more, and consider things that you may not even contemplate to be factors. So without further ado, I'd love to get into this. So anybody who wants to, yes, ma'am.
Wait, sorry.
Sorry. Well, put that there.
Okay, I'll try to be louder. So I am curious, you glossed over how people do get into soil work, because I'm in STEM research and my director is expert in synthesis. And we had to look up to identify dynamics.
So throughout getting into soil research, I started out in what I would consider regenerative agriculture, and realized very quickly that there were a lot of problems we were consistently dealing with that had no real answers, or even conversations around them. So edaphodynamics is the study of the relationships between converging factors in soil. When we look at soils, generally we only see a fraction of what it is. People think, oh, it's just biology. Maybe it's just calcium. Maybe it's just nitrogen, this or that. And I ran into that a lot. And over time, through my own research, learned that that was almost never the case, and that there was no silver bullet. So edaphodynamics came out of a necessity to have a framework to be able to address problems holistically, in the sense that we're considering every factor, we're quantifying things rather than going by our gut. And so over the course of building Flora Vida, after much trial and error, I discovered what I would call a set of principles rather than any one technology or single discovery that I found would manifest into problems that we consider have no solution. For instance, Bermuda grass. It's very easy to get rid of in reality, but we approach it from the wrong angle. And that was really the first discovery that led me to the existence of these things in soils, whether they're biological relationships, geomorphological, hydrological, whatever they are, there are drivers beneath every problem we see, and there's not generally a way to quantify them. And so that's what that term came from, is because it didn't exist before us. We actually coined that term ourselves. And yeah, I mean, when we tell people that, people have no earthly clue what I'm talking about. And so don't be surprised if there wasn't even a Wikipedia, because I don't think there is. Yeah, that was really the root of how we got to here. Was the original company that had a mission to grow flowers a new way. And I saw a lot more value in bringing those skills and that expertise to people like yourselves who want to grow natives. Maybe you want to grow vegetables, maybe you want to grow something else, maybe you just want a greener lawn. So part of this presentation, and really the entirety of it, are just the questions I get every single time I talk to someone, whether it's about natives or soils. There's common things that occur, and I'd love for you guys to consider these in your own context and consider how they apply, and ask really any question. Curiosity is heavily welcome. So the first one I regularly get is, why do some of my natives do great while others struggle? Like, why is my big blue stem doing phenomenally while my switchgrass won't grow, or vice versa? I've seen every combination of the two, and the answer to that generally comes back to soil. I've said for years that natives are not native to regions. They're native to soils which meet their conditions for survival. So if I see big blue stem or caliche adapted varieties of it, they grow all the way from Texas up into Oregon. And that tells me that that soil is likely sustaining them rather than the region, because there's a whole lot of different climates along that band. And so the question I always get, people ask, well, what does it need? What does it need to thrive? And they're usually looking for one thing. They're looking for it's nitrogen, or it's a fertilizer. They want some almost elixir to fix everything. And the answer is, what natives need is the environment they used to have, whatever that may be for that adapted variety. And that's how we approach it generally, is we approach planting natives or any crop as a soil first problem or challenge to meet. If we're going to grow a native, the native is only going to express itself as well as the soil can sustain it to do so. Any questions on this at all? Any at all? So, and this is another very common one. It's along the same lines as the first, but I've often gotten, and I'm sure all of you have seen, where you'll plant out a blend of natives in multiple spots. Same exact blend, same method, and one spot of milkweed is going to take off and the other one's going to wilt away and die. This is a very common one, and it very regularly comes back to the same thing, which is our soils now aren't the slightest bit like what we used to have when we had tallgrass prairies or cypress forests or any of the slew of ecosystems Texas once had. So when we look across Texas, we see, anybody tell me what the most prevalent plant you see regularly is? That's the plant.
Oh, blue stem.
You had to throw the hydrogen bomb in there. Yes, Andy. That's a great example, actually. So anybody here deal with KR blue stem on a regular basis? Oh, hi.
Yes.
Great, you do. Tell me a little bit about that.
There's a strip of green space with a sewer running underneath it, so it's been dug up across the street from my house, and it is full of KR blue stem. And as a result, my health strip along that street is sorry. Oh.
It's a constant battle with PR Blue Stem because across the street, there's a field that is owned by the county and the city in the parts for drainage and it's full of PR Blue Stem. And so it flows across into my health strip, which is admittedly not the best soil. It's dry and cracked and all that. And the KR Blue Stem does better than everything else.
So that's a great example. Everywhere we look in cities, if you look at the management plans under which or the way we care for our soils. I can tell you from some of my own experiences talking to people who manage environments in Houston and around the country that the first thought is to go to an herbicide every single time, kill it. The question we often ask that goes along with this is rather than telling someone directly, okay, your natives need this one thing, I ask the question back to them, why do you think so? Have you done any testing? Have you done any verification? Have you tried to quantify or understand what that native needs? It's like talking to your friend. If you imagine you're having a friend who's having a hard time, you don't directly go to them and tell them, you need to do this right now. Maybe sometimes you do, but only in strange cases. When you're doing that, I try to approach with the same care towards a native that we show to another person. The only reason we have life on this planet is because we have 6 inches of topsoil and sometimes it rains. And so people generally go to an herbicide and there's not a lot of thought to ask why. I found through my own research that if we have a native, the approach that's worked for me, whether it's milkweeds, whether it's Texas frog fruit, any of these ones we commonly see, trying to replicate the same conditions that they would have had when they evolved or for what they evolved into is generally a more reliable solution than trying to find a quick fix. There are very few situations I have seen throughout my career or throughout any research I've done that show me that there is a consistent variable. It's generally that land history has affected things. Perhaps the natives have a deficiency, but more likely than not, we have an excess that prevents a native from doing well. The systems and soils we used to have, especially in this region, were very well regulated by themselves before any human ever stepped foot there. If you can imagine short-faced bears and bison roaming around, tends to take care of itself. And we found that there are residues left in soil from fertilizers and herbicides we applied up to 100 years later. But yes, there are a lot of reasons why native species can perform differently, but generally it's that just because we say a native is adapted to say, let's say a wetland or a hydric soil, what we think about is that hydric soil, but we're not thinking about the individual components that compose that. So if one upland area of my property has a species doing well, and the lower area is somewhat similar, but has a species not doing well at all, the thought isn't generally to go and look at directly what composes my soil. How much fungi do I have? How much bacteria? What kinds of bacteria? Do I have pathogens? Are my minerals in balance? Those questions are never what we think about. They aren't what I thought about when I started out. I had to learn through falling on my face very often. But I would say that the answer that I've had to this, and some of you have had, I'm sure, experiences with natives that are similar to this, and I'd welcome the feedback to hear more and learn more from you as well, is that there are conditions which the natives will express themselves in. And a thought is generally the best genetics or the most pure seed or something like that. And it's rarely what we're putting them into. And so this has been probably the most common I've gotten at least 200 times in the past year. I've been asked this exact question by people all the way from Southern Oregon all the way into Georgia. It's a very common problem I've seen across the entire US. Would anybody have any questions? Yes. Oh gosh, you're racing. There's a race.
Hello. Working. So I have a comment, but it's still a question. So I
I've definitely observed this on my property. But I bought a native that was recommended to me in one of these meetings. And I bought 2 plants and I planted them side by side and put little borders around so I could label them. And one of them looks bad and burnt, and one next to it looks fantastic. And it's even getting seeds, and the other one is just kind of looking a bit unhealthy.
Tell me a little bit more. What's the history of your property? Where is it located? What do you see
Yeah.
around the natives?
Oh, that's a really good point. So my neighbor had big trees, and so it's a side plot between my house and a neighbor adjacent. There's a fence, which is wonderful in theory, but the neighbor had a lot of trees, large trees that were located inside the fence, and the property was bought and the owner decided to cut them all down and left me with a sea of sawdust. So it didn't clean, so I dug it out, and it is roughly gumbo, but a little bit more concrete-like than gumbo. And I persisted and dug 2 spots up. All kinds of things have grown there since, but the part that has the layer of the sawdust doesn't seem to be taking anything. And I had put seeds down, and multiple packets of seeds gave me 1 plant that thrived and did wonderful, and it was growing somewhere else on the property. So I transplanted that from the other spot to see if I could get more of it, so it wouldn't be lonely, strange looking. But basically I dug up 2 spots where there was all this sawdust and enriched the soil a tiny little bit. Okay, I'm not gonna exaggerate, it wasn't much. But I just put a border around it, and then I started watering it regularly. And I presume they're about the same size plant, so I assume that I'm watering them the same and they get the same amount of sunlight. So it's a sunny spot, but it has, of course, the plants can block the light.
What is this plant, if you don't mind me asking? This plant?
I'll have to look through my pictures to remind myself about what it was.
And so what kind of trees did they cut down?
Not sure.
You're not sure?
They could be,
So given that this is somewhat of a abiotic thing, somebody decided that it was a really good idea to give a buzz cut to your tree line. I've seen situations on my own property where like it could be soil pH, to be honest. You never know without testing, but what you should note is that pH does not happen by itself. As well as it could be a slew of other issues. You could have allelopathic residues from the trees. If they were cedars, I can tell you nothing will grow. Very few things will grow really. We've had areas where there was mulching done on ranches I worked on when I was younger. And still to this day, 6 years later, nothing will grow from cedar residues or pine residues. There are compounds left in sawdust that don't really degrade without help. And so you can have what are called hot spots in soil sometimes, where you've got maybe a high amount of microbial activity, and that breaks down some of those residues, even if you have sawdust. And so it just varies point to point. If you had, some sort of tree that tends to be pretty aromatic, chances are you've got some leftovers. Is this all in the area that has sawdust? Yeah, just those 2 plants. Are they just right next to each other, right in that sawdust?
and I didn't realize the sawdust would be a problem.
Mhm.
I hoped it would actually keep all the other stuff safe back from growing up. And even having to keep.
That's not a bad word. I mean, that's
One-
called mulching. That's not bad.
But one of the things that happened in the meantime, that spot was bare, neglected by bare, covered in sawdust. One thing that has happened is like millions of things have grown in that area,
Okay.
in spite of the sawdust, just not in the part where I put the seed.
Little fun fact about them. They could grow in concrete if you wanted them to. Secondly, they're one of the only plant groups that has remediated organisms in their roots already dormant within the cuttings. So we don't usually start things from seeds. So they tend to carry a lot of the endophytes within their vascular tissues that you wouldn't normally see in another plant. So that activity can get carried into the root system. I've seen them break down corn stubble that is around them or spread around them in just a number of days. So it wouldn't surprise me that they've grown. I'd be interested to see like what you've got, and feel free to reach out to us at any time. We'll come take a look if you want. Happy to. Yeah.
Help me, help me.
I don't want to discourage anybody from getting started with it.
You got me when you said Bermuda grass.
It's everyone.
I don't actually have a Bermuda grass problem, but I have a property that was in cotton until 1970
Mhm.
and cattle since. I have about a 15-acre field in the adjacent to a creek, Blackwood Prairie. It's got a lot of eastern gamma grass on it, which I'd really like to encourage. But it's also got a lot of Johnson grass.
Okay.
Where do I start without, because if you go to NRCS, you go to TPWD, they all say herbicides.
They all do, every single one of them.
Where
So
do we
like
start?
when you us, come talk to us. I've dealt with Johnson grass a lot, way more than I care to admit. It's quite a nuisance. Bermuda grass, Johnson grass. We haven't dealt that much with KR bluestem yet. I'm pleased to admit that I don't have that much of it where I'm located, just outside of town in Old Washington. Where? You're 5 minutes from me. Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, with Johnson grass, it's actually usually a pH problem. And if you go to an RCS ag extension, they're going to tell you line your field. They say if it's too acidic, you need to put calcium carbonate or gypsum down. And if they tell you it's too alkaline, they're going to have you put ag lime down. Neither of those will do it. What we found over time and through a lot of research is that pH isn't something that we can directly manipulate reliably. It's all the other factors in soil, from mineral composition to cations and anions being balanced, all the way into, what kinds of microbials you have present. And we figure that out through running metagenomics usually. But when we go into those situations, I've had Johnson grass in my fields, and when we correct the pH down to the ideal level, it just dies off, goes away. We don't put an herbicide on it ever because it will come back from it. It's at the lowest trophic scale you can get, right there with Bermuda. So most people don't get that herbicide really only works if you have something living to kill. And if your soil's dead, that's not going to get carried into the ground to the root. But we found that it's mostly a pH problem, and you start by just when you start to restore soils and you get the microbiome that's native back, the problems like you're talking about with those tend to just straighten out. I mean, we've even, on my field where I've gotten rid of Bermuda, we were even able to get rid of fire ants from that. It seems that when Bermuda goes away, so did fire ants, so did crazy ants.
Wow.
And then also the hogs have not touched our field in years. Like, yeah, maybe one little annoying one will come over the root, decide he doesn't like it, and he'll leave. And so, in short, if you restore your soils and bring back some balance, chances are it's going to go, and go away. The problem's going to dip out a little bit.
How's flooding and erosion on property?
That's on ours. So I will say the biggest thing I've seen on flooding, we're capturing right now when we get a heavy rain. And Andy, I would say, oh, there he is. Andy would probably be one of the best ones to attest to this. Our infiltration, I'm not even sure how we'd be able to calculate it. Andy came out one day during actually somewhat of a monsoon to the field. And once we got rid of the Bermuda, our flooding went away. It looks like a bath drain. I mean, you couldn't really calculate easily what it was. Andy might be able to give you some idea. I have no idea. But and then our erosion completely went away. I describe it like a concrete wall. If you go look at the soils in my fields, that I've done myself, you look and they look almost like a sponge cake. There's bubbles everywhere. It's like sourdough. And the way I describe it is if you have a tsunami hit a concrete wall, what usually happens? The wall falls. If you can allow the water to pass through it, what happens? Doesn't. There's no resistance. So when you solve the resistance problem by bringing back balance to your soils and fixing what's going on with them and restoring them, you tend to solve more issues than just your Johnson grass. The best place to get started is with starting to look through testing at what you actually have happening, not what the extension will tell you. I'm going to go in order to start it.
So I was a talk, where this lady did. I was in a talk where this lady did research on a certain neighborhood in Houston where the soil was contaminated because it was near the railroad tracks and it was like creosote and stuff like that. And she talked about planting natives to clean up the soil. Is that a thing? And what are these native plants that can clean up soil?
Short answer is no. This is the one question I wasn't sure if I'd get. Oh boy, Andy's walking away. He knows this is a hop. So natives don't really restore soil very well. They fit an ecosystem niche, and they took millions of years to evolve to the point where they were able to sustain themselves, and they evolved alongside a whole slew of megafauna. The same way there's megafauna in Africa, Texas used to be the hotspot for mastodon, mammoths. All of those things were alongside them during the end of the last ice age when temperatures heated up and coming into the Holocene. So when you look at the trajectory they took, and you start looking at, I mean, I'm sure everyone here could tell you, if you plant natives into barren soil, probably maybe switchgrass would take, maybe some panicum grasses would take. Those are all low trophic scale, what we call ecosystem engineers. The same deal with mesquite, huisach, Chinese tallow. Any of these rapidly aggressive plants are only able to take over with minimal competition. And so when you talk about remediation, that's actually our bread and butter, if you will. We've done hydrocarbon remediation and a few others on small plots and have had success, but natives would not be my first choice. I can't tell you off the top of I can tell you off the top of my head that there are natives that in their root zones, they're what I call rhizospheres, would be able to hold microorganisms that could remediate. But that's only if the soils are amenable to them, because I can put that remediative native into barren soil and it's not going to do that because the soil isn't there to sustain it. And so if it were me and I was remediating, I would target tearing apart those molecules with targeted inputs that work with the soil to build it back up. And I would probably plant hybrids before I ever plant natives. I would build the fungal microbiome back up, and then slowly the natives will either come back or you can plant them back in. Like we have blue stem all over our fields now, some of our fields, because it's already there. All of our natives are in a seed bank and the soil just isn't having the catalytic conditions for it to kick off the reaction to make them germinate. So I would say that there are ways to remediate like creosote, things with plants and microorganisms and nutrients. Natives would not be my first choice to do it. There is truth to it though. It's just that there's truth and it kind of can fall apart with context. But yes, it's possible to do phytoremediation. That's what you're referencing. That's what it's called generally, is phytoremediation. There are plants. They're not going to be the natives we think of. Our area specifically was such a hot spot for megafauna that our soils, the best thing I could recommend anyone read to understand what our soils used to be like would be the essays of Cabeza de Vaca. He was a conquistador who came here. He was taken prisoner by the Karankawa and lived on Galveston Island, traveled through the Brazos Valley and all around Houston. And he described a very different picture from what we saw even when settlers got here. And so if you wanted some context for what it might have been like back then, this would have been the early 1500s. that's probably where I'd look to put a lens on it.
I would say, just to point out, like, think about what Eric is saying in relationship to, think of all natural processes. How many of them can laser level like 5,000 acres in a week or two? Like, totally change your entire composition structurally, physically, chemically of soil in a matter of like a couple seconds. You have land, like maybe landslides could do that, right? You have an import in, you're not getting turnover, push around, all this kind of stuff. So I think that like what Eric is pointing at is that he's thinking about how do you start from the bottom up, from like physics, biochemically, to trajectory change soil back to maybe conditions that took hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years to create, that were in relationship to that time were changed in a matter of a split second in relationship to how long it took the soils to form. So I think that's the hardest thing I found in terms of these topics, is that you have to almost hold that framework to understand what Eric's saying.
That's actually a great piece of context, is we think in our time frame because we're mortal. Like, we live 100 years if we're really lucky. And soils can take millions of years to form. And so we see this snapshot of 100 years and we think, God, they're never going to get better. We don't see that Bermuda grass is only here to try to build up enough biomass to get the soils back on track, but it's going to take another 1,000 years if it's left alone completely. So where we come in and approach it from is, how do we accelerate nature's process that already exists into a reasonable time frame where we could see? And we've had results within 3 years of getting rid of Bermuda grass and acacia and mesquite and every other thing you could imagine. That's why our fields have natives and no Bermuda. I mean, Andy can attest to this. He didn't believe me when I told him. He walks out here, he digs down, he's like, oh, huh, you weren't lying. And I'm like, it's because you don't believe it when you hear it. But you can dig down on our fields, 3 feet, there's no Bermuda roots, nothing. We don't have invasives anymore, and it's because we didn't try to kill them. It was the opposite. It's like, why are they occurring? Why are they here? Why are the natives not here anymore? And then you replicate the process using all the technology we have at our disposal in the 21st century, and within a reasonable project timeline, you can have a fully functional landscape again. Because what we think about is, it's like, there's a, what, I'm just going to close through this. I'm going to show you all this visually because it's the best way to understand. Nope, go back, go back to that. Doreen, you might have to. Sorry.
One last topic, I have a question.
Okay.
Can you target, like if you have a native plant yard, you target the grass, not the native plant?
Yes, this is entirely, what we do is entirely selective, because you're mimicking the environment it likes and not what the other one's like. This is how we think about soil. Everyone is thinking, we actually have a joke that people think like werewolf hunters. We're looking for a silver bullet, and I used to as well, until I saw that there was so much more going on, and that trying to mimic nature as closely as possible, but speeding it up was the way. So this is kind of how we view soils. Is almost a type of just this like trinity of, and at the conjunction of them is where things merge. So you've got chemistry, and that's your, like what Amy's talking about, like, maybe you have an aeolian deposit or some alluvial soil, and that would have been nature's natural mineral influx, but that gotta wait on the rain or the landslide or the earthquake. And then the chemical balance would change. So that's one factor itself. The other is biological, but it can't happen without this one. So if we don't have proper chemistry, then we can't have biology. So then you get to biology. It can only survive in conditions which meet its needs. The same as us. We're not gonna, if we have no running water, no food, no roof over our head, no shelter from the elements or treatment for disease, what happens to us? Yeah, exactly. So it needs conditions. It needs a home, just like we do. It needs a functional life. You're gonna Marie Kondo your soil, if you will. Organize it nicely and it will be happy. And when these two come into check, that's where function emerges. So that structure is going to come from these two factors coming into play. And then in the middle, when all of those things line up, that's where you have function. That's where your natives will come back and you will not have to go out and spot treat with them. So this is how we view it, and it requires systems thinking. This isn't a secular science. Edaphodynamics is a study of the systems at play and the relationships between them. Please pick up. I'm so sorry. Right, go ahead.
Yeah, you were talking about that Bermuda grass has low permeability. So I've done some work with Harris County Flood Control, and they plant Bermuda grass because it grows fast and for erosion control. But this is areas that they want for flood control. You want more permeability than Bermuda grass. Any suggestions?
That without doing that somehow tell them yeah. I've talked with flood control some, and I think people plant Bermuda because it's become very culturally acceptable to look like a golf course, and it's cheap. And you can mow it, but what if you didn't have to mow it? I mean, if people knew how much money the Harris County spends on mowing, your head's gonna explode. Yes. So, if you think about it, when we got rid of the Bermuda, we didn't get rid of the Bermuda. That's the biggest thing. We say that because that's what people understand. But realistically, that chart I showed you is we corrected those factors and it went away voluntarily. I didn't have to fight it. It just went, okay, I don't want to live here anymore. I'm gonna go over there where they spray herbicide and everything else that I like because it has all these metal components and all of these things that it likes unhealthy soil. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that all that grows in Bermuda is other weeds that you don't want. And that generally means your soil's probably not the best thing at that point. But our fields, I would defer to the wetland ecologist present, Mr. Newman, to answer a little bit about the infiltration we've seen, because I would recommend Harris County do something different, yes.
Well, I think to Eric's point, we're even thinking about systems and functions and what the manifestation of chemistry, structure, result in biology is. The Bermuda is the expected result. We want to blame the Bermuda or get mad at the Bermuda, but the Bermuda is just doing what's available to it, and we set it up to win, right? That we've so fundamentally changed what he's talking about in terms of that triangle, that what we want to see is native species, but they're not set up to succeed. So when you're talking about an organization like flood control, their mission is to get the water off of y'all as fast as possible to the bay. That's it. That's their primary goal. Now, if we had permeability, that's great. But until you fundamentally shift the mindset of how you're going to retool the actual soil structure to support some of these species that's going to promote increased permeability, that they can actually implement, it's just going to keep being Bermuda because it's cheap, it's mowable, and to be honest, it serves function. Right once it's established, it's got okay rooting ability. I see most of the soil erosion I see in flood control is they put the bat wings down at an inch, and they come along and they hit a curve and they're scraping down with the blade. It's not the Bermuda's fault. It's the constant mechanical disturbance, more and more on top of the soil has already been retooled entirely. And that AB horizon of soil that took hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years to form is in the Gulf of Mexico now, right? You're in sea crap soils, and that's what you get.
And he's absolutely right on this. I mean, this is the thing about Bermuda is it's treated like the devil. It's not, it's predictable. It's clockwork. We put fertilizers down, poison. We've taken off every bit of topsoil. The horizons he's talking about are the zone, what we refer to zones of soil. If you looked at the side of it from a side snapshot, you'd see a dark upper layer. You'd see a kind of dark layer, and that's the zone of what we call illuviation from the eye at the front. That's where you get inflow of minerals and stuff. And when we've done what we've done in Houston, and I say we, I'm not meaning us, I'm meaning flood control management we've done here, we're taking off down to sea, which is bedrock, essentially. It's turning it into a desert functionally. Bermuda serves its function for erosion control, but it's not like, oh, Bermuda's happening for no reason. I mean, it's kind of like I just put my hand on the stove burner and I got burned. Like we ask ourselves why it happens, and my answer is like, what else is gonna happen? What did you do?
It's just a technical question. The way back, when people started doing backyard gardens, things like that, they told us that, it used to be that you go and you turn the soil, and then when you turn the soil, everything, all the microbes die. So when you're looking at a huge land like you have, I've seen people try to level. And when they level, they just cut off all the microbes. Is that right? Is that still active?
So the answer is that's called land planning, and it's actually done very commonly. It's not the end of the world. The biggest thing to note is we consider it as like, oh, this is absolute, it's ruining forever. And we've basically been answering this question the whole time, but really well. We see this land planning, we're like, oh God, this is the worst thing ever. It's not, it just matters what you do after. You can rebuild that A horizon, the B horizon at pretty much any level. I mean, I've seen microbes weather rock down to dust in a matter of months. So it's not like that's the end of the world, but what you're talking about inversion, soil inversion, is when you turn it over, ultraviolet light sterilizes, in case anybody needs to know. And that's wide knowledge, but that soil inversion is part of the problem. And if you ask me, I would say it wasn't the main one. It's probably that over time we have gotten farther and farther and farther and farther away from the system that originally sustained these things. Any more questions?
Two questions really. Where do you suggest we have our soil tested?
We actually have our own lab in Nevada that we run
Okay.
testing from. We have different labs we use around the country, but we can run any test people want, everything from hydrocarbons to PFAS. Whatever they need to find in their soil and water and leaves if they want to look at crop nutrition or nutrient density of their veggies. We can do it. A big thing I'll say is when you send things, the typical suggestions, the ag extension, right, or the NRCS, they test for about 4 to 5 things. It's going to be pH, organic matter, maybe EC, and then NPK and a few others. That tells you essentially nothing you need to know. There are a few cool ones in there, but I would say that the things that we look at when we test soil that's different is we overlay biological function onto composition, and those two, like base of that pyramid, allows us to kind of evaluate where things are now, and they give us the actionable information to be able to then build back structure and then function emerges. The kind of testing we run generally to do projects isn't what you would ever get out of a university. Actually, our labs we use are the same ones A&M uses for their own research. They do not use the standard testing you guys would get for their own research. But we find it to be incredibly helpful, and once you have the data, getting this much data up front is more expensive than what you get at the ag extension, but the solution is generally cheaper, and you're gonna fix it, it's gonna take some time to fix, and then you're gonna be good to go.
So I have a small urban garden that I just tore it up, had it taken down and rebuilt. And basically the rebuilding was just every bit of that soil went through one man's hands, and he put some microlife in there. And that was about it. And the garden did very well for a few years. And then it's declined. Its ability to sustain itself hasn't held up. So my question is, how do I get my soil tested, and what does it cost, and how does it happen?
What I will tell you, since we got 3 slides. So I'll actually say we've got some flyers we handed out. we have set up a discount deal. Normally our testing sets run about, I think they're $27.50. That's about what we would normally, or actually they're less, that's right. But we've got a discount program running right now. You can go to the QR code on these flyers, scan it, go to our website. When you go through our form, to get in touch and get your testing order, because most testing sets are pretty unique. There's no one single thing we do every time. You can go through there and get a nice discount to help you get started. And from there, we can make any recommendation from thousands of different earth-friendly inputs we use. But I would say, because we're running low on time here, your soil's probably used up the microlife at this point. That's all. And if you wanted to get it tested through us, we're more than happy to help. And we would love to work with you. And I think we're low on time here. Give me just a minute. My head of growth is gonna talk to y'all real quick.
Hi, I'm Eric's conscience. My name's Alexis. I was Director of Strategic Growth. I did hand out some flyers to everybody. If you did not get a flyer, it's because we ran out. I do have one extra copy in the back. So if you did not get a flyer and would like it, let me know. We can take a picture of it, scan the QR code. And yes, we will have a 5% off on our testing. So if you would like to take advantage of that, I do recommend it. We have a phenomenal process. So it is start to finish everything that you would need to restore your soils and take care of your land. So it's very important to us. It's a passion of ours. And we're really appreciative of you all taking the time to listen to Eric today.
So I want to thank Andy, Doreen, and everyone who's part of the Native Plant Society.
I was gonna say one more, maybe that's a better microphone.
Yeah, you do that.
I want to say one more thing to think about to add on to Eric's talk, right? Is we see these green plants, right? But green is like, they don't like that spectra. That's why you see it's bouncing off the plant, right? The plants, think about when he talks about biology, he's not talking about the plants are manifested off of this, right? What plants do the best is they take raw energy and convert it into forms that then goes through the entire other system. But all the stuff that they need in terms of magnesium, cobalt, heavy metals, a lot of these oftentimes insoluble, unavailable resources that they need to grow. It's all the stuff you can't see below ground that he's talking about. But that's what drives the pH. That's what's driving this stuff. So I think it's really important to realize that we love the plants, but it's like pandas, right? They're charismatic, they're cute, right? And you can see them, right? But like bamboo's the main driver there, right? Like that there is like the plants are the rays, right? But the ones that are doing the work, like they're just trading for stuff below ground. But one more comment and then we'll go.
All right. The way I think about it is generally like this. Your soil is a computer. Every plant's just a signal. Your invasives are the error message. They tell you exactly what's going on. We just test to find the code. That's it. Right. So I want to thank everyone for having me. I'm going to wrap up now and hand this off to whoever's responsibility it is. And